In Gilead, getting your period meant that you were turning into a woman, and Hannah's about to get hers. Hannah describes the adult female body as one big booby trap, pun intended, remarking that if a woman had a hole, something is bound to get shoved in it, and then something is bound to get shoved right back out. If you weren't a Martha or an aunt, you had to at least try to have kids. There was no other purpose for women in Gilead. They were taught that they had different brains than men. Males were hard and focused. Girl brains were soft and mushy because women aren't distracting themselves with things like learning. They have more space in their brain to be caretakers. Daughters were taught to welcome their period and blood itself as a part of life as a woman. Daughters were taught to be comfortable around blood and other bodily substances because women were meant to be caretakers of the young and elderly. And that's part of the reason why the handmaids wear all red. The blood red color represents their fertility. But the handmaids redefined it into becoming their war paint. It became their uniform, representing all the senseless blood that has been shed to make Gilead bleed. The daughters of Gilead were separated into two social classes: those born properly by commander and wife, and those born illegitimately, that are byproducts from the assistance of a handmaid. We're in chapter 15. And as much as aunts tried to market handmaids as essential service workers that are atoning for their sins, they were still regarded as glorified sluts. But the daughters of Gilead have zero sexual education, so they don't even know what a slut even is. To them, a slut is someone who has gone with someone's husband but doesn't have a husband of their own. I mean, they kind of right with that one. But they don't even know what gone with means. If anything, it can mean gone with the wind. After Tabitha dies, Hannah finally learns the real truth about who her real mother is. But once it comes out in school that Hannah's real mom was one of these slutty handmaids, her popularity plummeted. And at home, Commander Kyle and her evil new stepmother Paula received a handmaid of their own to replace her. Hannah didn't know much about handmaids. Children were taught to keep their distance because it was too hard on the handmaids to interact with children. We're in chapter 16. When Hannah turns 13, she learns that her real mother was a handmaid, and she becomes obsessed with learning anything she can about her. She was brainwashed all her life to believe that the memory that she had of running away in the forest was a dream. Hannah tried asking her Marthas if they knew anything about her, but all they could tell her is that if her mother was caught running away with her, she was most likely turned into a handmaid. And handmaids have no name, no way to tell them apart, and no homes. It would be basically impossible to reunite with her. So when Commander Kyle and Paula get a new handmaid of Kyle, who we later learn real name is Crystal, Hannah becomes obsessed with Crystal. Started to fantasize that of Kyle was her real mother. She would fantasize that of Kyle would look at her and recognize her, and they would be reunited, being rescued, even though she wasn't exactly sure what she was being rescued from. She tries sneaking into her room to find a glimpse of who she might have been before this, but just like her mother's room once was, all traces of the old Crystal was wiped clean. Only a chair, a table, and a lamp. There wasn't even a scratching in the wall. Finding her real mother in a sea of handmaids was like finding a needle in a haystack. Impossible. The most dangerous place in Gilead for a girl is alone with a man, and Hannah's about to go to the dentist. Chapter 17. Dr. Grove was the best dentist in Gilead, and although dentists were considered econo people, Dr. Grove was able to rise in status. His daughter Becca gets to go to wife school instead of econo wife school, and he's even allotted a handmaid. So when Dr. Grove essayed Hannah during her dentist appointment, she didn't know what to do but just sit there and wait for it to be over. Daughters aren't taught about consent. They're only told that men have these uncontrollable urges and that it's up to girls to ward them off. But Hannah knows what happens to girls that speak up against powerful men. They're either told that they were lying and get punished, or told that it was their fault and get punished. Hannah never felt more trapped and alone in this world. So Hannah went home and tried to pretend none of it happened. She was scared if someone like her stepmother found out, they could use that information against her. Hannah wasn't Dr. Grove's first victim, and she wasn't his last. But in later chapters, Aunt Lydia gets her lick back. Follow me to join the Book to Screen Club. Unmarried girls in Gilead weren't allowed to witness births. They had to wait until they were trapped into a marriage of their own to learn their own inevitable fate. We're in chapter 18. Hannah's home from school with her first period the same day that her family's handmaid goes into labor. She snuck up as close as possible and listened to the two opposing sounds. On one side, she could hear laughing and clinking. The wives are having a tea party and drinking champagne, happily celebrating the arrival of the baby. And then on the other side, she can hear a distant yet indistinguishable, animalistic, almost guttural groaning, surrounded by a chorus of push, 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 breathe, breathe, breathe. You know the nonsense that they were doing. The greatest shame that a handmaid could bring to a family is living to give birth to an unbaby, a word that they use to describe a baby born with birth defects or disabilities. Gilead was far from pro-life. They were more like procreate a perfect white child. The greatest womanly honor a handmaid can make is sacrificing her own life for the baby. And by sacrificing, I mean that they cut open of Kyle while she was still awake and alive to get the baby out. They didn't even bother to try to save her life because she already did her job and was redeemed from her sins. Listening in on this birth scarred Hannah for life. It radicalized her to try to escape her inevitable fate. There's a reason why Gilead had tons of toys, games, and nursery rhymes that helped cement Gilead values into their kids. We're in chapter 19. Gilead snakes and ladders. Land on a prayer and you climb up the ladder tree of life. Land on a sin and you slide down the satanic snake. Gilead Barbie dream house with every doll for every role. Martha in the kitchen. A commander in his office. And a pregnant handmaid locked away. They even played with playing cards, but instead of letters, we had symbols. Kings were commanders, queens were wives, jacks were aunts. The aces was one giant eye looking down from the sky. Spades were angels, clubs were guardians. Diamonds were Marthas, hearts were handmaids. So instead of a king of hearts, you would have a commander of handmaids. The wall song. Who's that hanging from the wall? Fee, fi, fiddle, oh. It was a handmaid. What was she called? Fee, fi, fiddle, fo. She was here and now she's not. Fee, fiddle, fiddle, fo. We had a baby in the pot. And then they would smack their stomachs. Fee, fi, fiddle, fo. I know it sounds sinister even for kids. The kids are a product of their environment. They'll make songs out of anything.